How now, brown cow? Welcome back to Objectively Ranking, the only show where we
interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Show, starring Courage, the Cowardly Dog!
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about Courage today. Courage is a great show, and I think everybody knows this. This is not something that is particularly controversial, I believe. Courage took the formula that Scooby Doo presented and created, essentially, and ran with it. It did its own thing, of course, don't get me wrong. There was plenty to be done and said about Courage that made it unique when compared to Scooby Doo. But the comparisons were so strong that even early on, before Courage was on the air itself, its pilot episode actually existed on, I think, Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost, maybe? Like, it was at the end of the movie as an extra presentation. I think I had that on VHS, because I'm old. But one of the most iconic and recognizable things about Courage is its villains. Every week, a new scary thing shows up in nowhere and scares the bejesus out of Courage. Sometimes Eustace, and sometimes Muriel. Usually just Courage. So, why don't we rank them? Why don't we rank those villains? That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna rank Season 1. And that's just because I only have so much time in a day. I only have so much that I can do right now. I would love to go through the rest of the seasons at a later date, and I probably will. But for the time being, Season 1 is the one that most people know anyway, so it all works out. Before we begin, thank you everyone so much for watching my last video. I know that this is kind of a departure from the Bleach content or the anime content in general, but as I've stated previously, I'm very deeply ADHD, and it's hard for me to focus on one thing for any given amount of time. I do plan to return to anime. I do plan to return to Bleach. I can't right now. My focus is gone. I just can't. I would very much appreciate it if you did leave a like, subscribe, comment, something, because I do plan on still producing enough content of varying degrees of interest to everyone. That out of the way, though, let's go over the criteria. First, and arguably the most important, tone. And what I mean by tone is when the villain appears, or when we're in the episode that the villain is in, what tone do they set? What mood do they create by being there? Are they silly? Are they scary? Are they funny? It just depends on the villain. I wanted it to be scare factor or funny factor, but even still, sometimes some are just sad. It's weird to think about that way, but sometimes Courage episodes are just kind of sad. You end up feeling bad for the villain. So, we have to judge each individual tone by how well they present it and how well they create it. Second, we have design. And design is important, obviously. Everybody will remember certain characters and certain aspects of certain characters simply based on how they look. And if you know a villain is particularly good, but you can't remember what they look like to save your life, they're not doing as well as they could be, you know? And vice versa. If you can remember very clearly what they look like, but not what they do, might be a little less important than you realize. And lastly, what is their intent? What is their plan? Is it fun? Is it functional? Does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, is it at least kind of aware of this and plays to it a little bit? Does it fit with the tone? Is there anything about it that stands out to make them more unique than they already are based on their tone and their design? There are a couple that are particularly villainous, but there are a couple that are particularly silly or even harmless in some cases. So we have to, again, judge based on the villain themselves, not just an overall theme or overall mood. A couple of assumptions we're going to be working with as well. First, we're going to be going with their strongest showing. This mostly applies to just cats. I think there's maybe one other villain that appears more than one time within Season 1. We're just going to take their strongest showing, whether that's their first showing, their second showing, or whatever. We're going to be taking the showing that paints them in the best possible light for them. Not necessarily like what makes them the prettiest, but you know, whatever makes them stand out in their own field the best. Secondly, they've got to be the main antagonist of an episode. At least one episode, just one. That just means we're not doing side characters, and surely the fortune teller is also not gonna be mentioned, except for right here, because she's not a villain. She tells Courage not to do something, and they do it. That's about it. She whacks Courage on top of the head a couple of times, but if that made somebody a villain in this show, everybody would be a villain in this show. Literally everyone. As always, each of the criteria are going to get a score from 1 to 10 for a total maximum score of 30, and no one's going to get a 30, but there are some that have gotten closer than have historically gotten. With that out of the way, please subscribe, and might as well start with Cats. I mentioned Cats at the top of the episode because Cats is the first villain we're introduced to within Courage the Cowardly Dog proper. And I mean proper because the pilot episode exists, but we're going to talk about it a little later. Cats, on the other hand, is probably one of the most well-known villains in Courage. And there's a good reason for it. Where Courage is this kind of short, pudgy, not eloquent at all thing, Cats is all of the opposite things. He's tall, he's slender, he's lithe, he's eloquent, he's charming, he's manipulative. Kind of just the difference between cats and dogs, you know? Thing is Cats is also a very bad person. He's a very bad cat. He's a bad kitty. And specifically in his first showing, the Cat's Motel, I don't know who wrote that episode. I don't know who thought that was a good first episode for a children's show, but they deserve a raise and then to be fired. Because the concept of going into a hotel, or a motel, and the owner of the proprietor of the hotel wanting to feed you to some spiders and probably having done it before is some serial killer shit. It genuinely is day one serial killer. And that's kind of terrifying. It's unlike anything that I would have expected to be in the first episode. I would have expected us to ease into the horror aspect, or to be off-the-wall horror, crazy horror that we don't get to see very often. But no, this is just very grounded, very real serial killer horror. It's good. I mean, it's very, very good. What a surprise. You know, Cat's Motel is likely one of the most seen episodes of Courage. It's just shocking how strong of a showing that is for Cats. And though I did praise his, design at least a little bit for being effectively the opposite of Courage, Cats himself is definitely not the star of wherever he's at. Cats is meant to be an instrument for other things to happen. He allows for things to happen. He is a mastermind. And as such, he just kind of looks like another character. And as a matter of fact, in the very next episode, as a matter of fact, in the very next episode, there's a character that looks almost exactly like him with just a couple of differences, which we'll get to that. We'll get there. But Cats himself is still better, at least in terms of design, simply because he's Cats. He has that voice, that presence. He's got that soundtrack snapping in the background, that smooth, dark jazz that Cats brings to the table. He's one cool cat. You know what? I like that. I can appreciate that, and I can really feel like Cats is threatening. Just not that stand out whenever I see him, in a street. I mean, don't get me wrong, if I saw a 6'2" bipedal cat man walking around in public, I would be I would point him out. I would wonder what was happening. But in the context of Courage, he's actually kind of plain looking. So for both tone and intent, he's gonna get an 8. And the reasons are pretty obvious in my opinion. He always is on top of things, and that includes his tone. He knows how to work the crowd. However, Cats is also usually pretty anticlimactically beaten, or something happens and it just ends up being blind luck that ends up defeating him, and it ends up kind of taking away from his overall feel, his overall vibe. The dark music in the background does help, but it's not quite enough to elevate him past an 8. Same with his intent. He is an evil thing, but with it being so grounded and so okay, this might happen to just some family out there, minus the cat man. With it feeling like that, it's missing something. It's missing a little bit of the magic, maybe literally in this case, but the spiders are big and scary, so that's still an 8. Design's a 5, though, because he's pretty plain by Courage standards. That brings him up to a 21 out of a possible 30. So I mentioned earlier how immediately after the Cats episode, there's another character that their design is pretty similar to Cats, and that's the Cajun Fox. I think they had the same realization that I did right off the bat, which is that the Cajun Fox needs to exist. There needs to be a silly episode following Cat's Motel, because Cat's Motel is a little depressing and likely to cause some questions. So you need a bit of a breather after that. But unfortunately, due to that most likely being what happened and what created the Cajun Fox, he kind of sucks. His episode kind of sucks. He's not good. First and foremost, his tone's all over the place. The Fox, first and foremost, his tone is kind of all over the place. It comes off as silly, but he's trying to eat Muriel also. He wants Cajun granny stew, but he's like putting her in like a cartoon pot, and he's got like crazy eyes, and it's just like, oh, this guy is nuts. Better not let him eat Muriel. And it comes off like it's trying a little too hard. Like this maybe would have been like a good episode if they had grounded it a little more kind of like Cats and made it a bit more as if they were just trying to have the Cajun fox consume Muriel. Just eat her. Not throw her in a Looney Tunes pot and mix her up with some carrots and onions and whatever else while she takes a bath in the simmering pool. It's probably one of the most overdone villain tropes in traditional Western cartoons that's out there. Nobody's ever seen a giant black cauldron big enough to fit a human being, and yet somehow all these cartoon villains seem to just be buying them wholesale from like Sam's or something. I don't know. But it's kind of just like, all right, do you have anything extra, anything new to add to this whole everything that you're doing? And the answer is no, he doesn't. He has nothing. He has crazy eyes, glasses, and that's it. And speaking of, that's pretty much the only difference between him and Cats. There are literally 4 differences, actually. He is orange. He is a fox. He has a Cajun accent. And he's got crazy eyes. That's pretty much it. They really phoned it in with this character design, I think, and that's all I have to say. I can't keep going on it. There's not much to talk about with Cajun Fox. So tone is going to get a 4 out of a possible 10 because it's just a little too little. Intent is going to get a 3 because I've seen it everywhere and I've seen it done better. But you know, at least it makes him somewhat of a threat. I'll give him that. And design's a 2. That gives him a 9 out of a possible 30. Up next, we have the Shadow. That's pretty much what he's called. It's just Shadow. There's not an official name given within the course of the episode, I don't think, other than the shadow of a miser or shadow of just this guy who's dead. And the Shadow is one of those characters that they use a lot in promotional material because it's pretty easy to use him. He ends up just manipulating shadows and darkness to make scary faces and scary monsters, to scare Courage, and to attempt to scare others. And that's it, really. That is the level of his intent and the level of his actual ability. He doesn't do a whole lot to actually harm anyone, because he's not a bad guy. And that's where tone becomes important. You understand that the Shadow is a lost soul, essentially, wanting more from its life than what it was given. And once it was freed from the thing that was holding it down, being life or being this individual, this old man, this old miserable, crusty man, once it became free, it didn't know what to do. It knew what it wanted, but it didn't know how to achieve it. So it lashes out at Courage, it lashes out at anyone, and just attempts to make them as miserable as it has been. But then by the end of the episode, it realizes that it wants to be with the stars. It always wanted to be a star. And so it goes and joins the stars. It floats to the heavens and joins the literal stars. Not Hollywood, but the stars. Which can be seen as it moving on. This angry, lost soul moving to the afterlife, going to heaven, if you want to call it that. A surprisingly good amount of imagery, a solid theme, and a decently relatable purpose. However, it looks like crap. It's arguably the laziest monster design in all of Courage the Cowardly Dog, because it is just a shadow. Like, whenever he's not shape-shifting, why didn't they make him look like the man? You know, like the miser. I guess potentially not having a body causes him to lose his shape, which is why he's shape-shifting and all of that. But that's all theory crafting. All I've got to go on is the fact that he looks like a thumb. So, I'm not going to call that a very good design. It's just not. I hate to say it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's a bad design. So for tone, we're going to get a 6. And I get a 6, not because it's particularly scary or funny or heartwarming even, but because it shows the versatility of some of the monsters within Courage the Cowardly Dog. It goes from this being a pretty standard villain by about the middle of the episode, starting from this unrelated seemingly thing happening, the soul detaching, it going rah, 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 a bunch, and then having a relatively happy ending after everything is said and done. I like that. You don't see that very often whenever it comes to Monster of the Week type shows or programs. It's it's nice, it's refreshing. Just like with his intent being to essentially move on into the afterlife but not being able to, makes it a 7, because it's a pretty complex theme. There's a lot of subtext you can read into it, unlike the design, which is a 2, because he's a thumb. That's a 15 out of a possible 30. And then you got Bigfoot. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Bigfoot. Bigfoot is lazy. Bigfoot is bad. Bigfoot is a placeholder character at the absolute very best. They had no ideas for an episode, and they threw a dart, and it landed on a photo of Bigfoot, and they're like, let's do it. And then somebody's like, but I'm eating this banana. And they're like, all right, make him do the Chiquita banana dance. Let's go. Have at it. The weirdest part about it is that Bigfoot's also used a lot in the promotional material. I don't know what it was about this particular pairing of episodes that caused them to use this as their commercials. But they really, really did. Specifically, Bigfoot with the Chiquita banana dance, followed by him yelling really loudly. Whenever I think of Bigfoot and Bigfoot designs, this is never one that is front of the mind. He's just kind of a guy. He's a hairy guy, and that's kind of the point of the episode, too. He has no intent. He has absolutely no reason to be there. He just accidentally is, because he's a hairy man who got away from his mama. I think that's it. I genuinely think he's not actually a Bigfoot. He may be a Bigfoot. I really don't know. It's unclear. I don't know if he's actually a Bigfoot who this woman birthed, which is concerning, or if it's just this man who looks like a Bigfoot who we're taking as Bigfoot. And again, he's not there for anything. He's just there on accident to hang out, I guess. And they don't really even know what they want to do with him. He goes from scary to mean to sympathetic to funny to scared, all in the course of an 11-minute episode, with no real consistency and no real consistent vibe. So for tone, we're gonna give him a 3 for tone. He gets a 3 because there are definite tones, like there are a bunch of different moods that the episode sets as we continue along with the episode. And he does a couple of them fairly well. It is a little funny, some of the situations he puts the Bagge family in. But it's not coherent, and it's not good most of the time. So 3 seems fine. Intent's a 1 because he doesn't have one, and design's a 3 for being a Bigfoot design. It's a 7 out of a possible 30. Alright, we got the Mattress Demon, otherwise known as an Exorcist reference, and that is it. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking that for what it is, but it is just an Exorcist reference, and I think everybody knows that. Now, talking about the Mattress Demon is a little weird, especially whenever you consider the design aspect. And I know I'm skipping a couple of steps, but this is kind of the elephant in the room whenever it comes to the Mattress Demon. In its showing in Season 1, the Mattress Demon is never actually shown. The Mattress Demon itself is just a mattress with a face on it. That's lame as hell. However, we're going to be counting Muriel's transformation and possession as the Mattress Demon for the sake of this particular episode, because that's the only way we know it in this season. And as far as designs go, it's a good one, man. They play with Muriel a lot over the course of the show. She is regularly a bit of an unconventional damsel in distress, and oftentimes is the one that's at the butt of most of these monsters' either desires or hatred. Not super sure why that is, to be perfectly honest, but it is a fact. And the Mattress Demon taking Muriel, who is essentially this pure little old lady, and turning her into a monster who absolutely has no control over her own actions. It's good. It's good. It's good stuff. It's some hot shit. And the tone that the Mattress Demon sets is almost unmatched throughout the course of Courage the Cowardly Dog. Mostly because, again, they are going for a movie reference. They are going for something of an actual, genuinely scary scenario with a couple of little silly bits, sprinkled in, such as the what was it? It's just like, hullabaloo and howdy, hoo, kick him in the dishpan, hoo, hoo, hoo. That part, I remember that. Which I guess that's a good thing. It provides some levity in a particularly stressful moment and particularly stressful scene. That's kind of the problem. Its tone is inconsistent. Only a little bit, because its intent is inconsistent a lot. And what I mean by that is the Mattress Demon is a very traditional, just kind of demon. It's there causing mischief, causing problems, causing issues, chaos. Not for a goal. It has no purpose. It is not there to do anything in particular. It's just there to ruin your day. And that's great and all, but I mean, you could do more. You're a demon, you know? Go out and kill a pastor. Go out and eat a chicken whole and then poop out its skeleton that's somehow still alive. Like, do something crazy. Create an army of undead fungi. I don't know how that works, but, you know, be creative. Do something else other than just lay there and screw around with Courage for a little while. I understand it. I get why not. I get why the mattress demon is just there to screw with Courage and to screw with Eustace. But, you know, I want more from it. With that all said, we're going to give its tone a 9 out of 10. Yes, I know, I said it was inconsistent at least a little bit, but that's not a bad thing in this particular scenario, because it's done well. There is a sprinkling, a smattering, just like a dash of humor sprinkled throughout, a dash of absurdity, and that's a good thing. It allows for this show to hit you unexpectedly, just because it can. However, the inconsistent tone is still inconsistent, especially whenever you take into consideration that the intent is a 5 out of possible 10. Wow. I butchered that whole sentence. I think I missed like 12 words. I'm so sorry. I'm not repeating myself, though. Design's an 8 out of a 10. Design is an 8 out of a possible 10. Taking Muriel's current appearance throughout the show and altering it and making her to be a monster is good. It's a good gimmick. I want to see her scarier. I want to see her at season 4 being possessed by the mattress demon again. That would be probably peak mattress demon, but this is still very good. That gives the mattress demon a total of 22 out of a possible 30. Alright, time for the first heavy hitter, I guess. It's Fred, baby! Let's go, let's talk about Fred. Let's try to find something that no one else has ever said about Fred, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that. Fred is something of the poster child of Courage the Cowardly Dog. Everyone who has seen Courage remembers Fred, and if you don't remember Fred, somebody on the internet will tell you all about Fred. Because Fred is a celebrity. A celebrity. That didn't work. But the reason why Fred is so iconic and so well known and well liked within the show is because Fred is arguably the most realistic monster in all of Courage. Fred is a guy. He is, I think, Muriel's nephew, who had just gotten out of a mental ward for the follically insane. And Fred has this sort of fetish with hair. He has this thing where he has to shave anything in his line of sight other than Muriel, apparently. And he has this obsession with Courage and this need to shave him completely bald. And Courage just wants to avoid him and be away from him. And it's a very uncomfortable episode, made even more uncomfortable by the fact that Fred is a scary fucking dude. It's alarming how frightening Fred is, being just a guy with a big toothy smile. His soundtrack helps, and his voice definitely helps. It's haunting, the way that he just drones on in an almost monotonous way, but not quite. There's just enough sinister intent beneath it for you to fear at least a little bit. And on the surface, his intent is just, I want to shave things. Like, whatever, just let him do it, you know? However, the thing that most people pick up on, and something that I don't know if I've seen talked about a lot, Fred very, very much is like an allegory for a particular type of assault that occurs from family members that nobody ever reports. Courage running, locking the door, slamming it, hiding, and everyone else in the family going, "Oh, Fred's fine, don't worry about it, it's okay, Courage, you're freaking out." And then it's still happening. Yeah. And when you combine that with, again, that soundtrack that is just the most haunting, like, children's choir you've ever heard in your life, combined with his rhyme schemes and the way he's talking and the way he's stalking and the way he's walking. Man, Fred's good. Fred's very, 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 very good. He's not perfect, though. It's very minor, but I'm gonna nitpick. Because at the end of the day, his design is that of just a guy with a big smile. It's a good design. It's a standout design, especially whenever it's in all dark at the beginning of the episode. You just see his teeth and eyes, but he's still just a guy. Compared to some of the other characters, there's a lot of room for improvement. Or at least a little. Looking at it on a surface level, his intent is pretty much just, I'm gonna shave you. beware my power. And if it wasn't for the subtext that I believe is there, I don't think that Fred would be that memorable in anything other than his design. But because of the presentation and the way the writers of Courage will move adult themes and hide them underneath a layer of children's joy or children's mysticism, really does keep it from being a bad intent. So for design, we're going to give him a 9 out of a possible 10. For being easily one of the most recognizable villains in all of Courage, but still just being a dude. Still being Fred, you know? You could see this guy at Walgreens, and you'd probably avoid him, but you'd go back to that Walgreens at least, like, every once in a while, like if you need something. His intent is going to get an 8 out of 10. 7 of that is subtext. 1 of that is he's shaving Courage. However, tone is going to get a 10 out of a possible 10, because it can't be beaten. It's so phenomenal. It's so top-notch. It's just good tone-wise. It is consistent. You fear Fred. You wonder what this guy is going to really do. And then he just goes. You never see him again. That gives him a 27 out of a possible 30. And then you got the weremole. Woo! Weremole is just a weremole. He's a guy, presumably, who got bit by a weremole and turned into a weremole, which is a werewolf, but it's a mole. That's the entirety of the episode. The weremole has no real purpose other than to bite Muriel and turn her into a weremole and turn a couple of other people into weremoles over the course of the episode. And the weremole is just like a badger. He just looks like a rat, like a large hamster with ominous lighting. When you see the weremole outside of his actual lighting where he's screaming, he just kind of stands there. He looks like a character from fucking Ren and Stimpy. I don't know. Weremole does nothing for me. There's no point to the weremole other than to have a just force of nature kind of monster that isn't there for any particular reason. And, you know, those are nice every once in a while, but man, you coming from Fred and you go to weremole? And the tone is a little silly too. Again, the lighting that the weremole brings to the table whenever he's actually in scare mode is alarming. It's like this sickly green yellow. He's shaking when he's screaming. That's cool and all, but there's no real fear in the episode. There's no real tangible terror that lasts for more than about a minute. It just is. He exists to cause a couple of little frights and then to move on about his day, which is exactly what we're about to do. Tone is a 3 out of a possible 10, because it's sometimes a little scary, but that's all you get. Intent's a 2 out of a possible 10, because he does have intent. He does want to do something. The weremole is there to bite you, and then just, again, go on about his day. Go to Kroger or something afterwards. I don't know. But design, we're going to give him a 5. And I know I was a little harsh on him, calling him like a gerbil or a hamster or whatever I called him. That gives him a 10 out of a possible 30. And I know I've been going in the order in which they are airing. However, speaking of airing, let's talk about all the birds, because there's a lot of birds over the course of season 1. Let's start with the Duck Brothers. I want to start with the Duck Brothers because they are probably the most unique of all of the birds that actually happen within the course of Courage. And they are part of what I would call the established bird lore within Courage, which is that all birds are either aliens, gods, or something to do with the above. They come from the sky, therefore they are aliens or gods or something like that. I mean, it's just how it works. The Duck Brothers are aliens, doing a Beatles impression for some reason, and they are also unique in the way that they are not villains at all. I mean, maybe a little bit. They are trying to break somebody out of prison, but when you're looking at Courage and the Bagge family specifically, they have no ill intent towards the Bagges. They just want to break their brother out of jail because they love him and they care about him. He's about to be experimented on and dissected and chopped up, and they don't want that. They don't want that, and that's reasonable, you know? That's a good reason to want to save somebody. It's a little weird that they're doing it the way they're doing by like manipulating Eustace and Muriel, but the climax where Courage finds out what they're doing and then using Eustace and Muriel in order to accomplish that goal, allowing them to reunite with their brother, it's good. I mean, it's surprisingly heartwarming, on top of the fact that the brothers themselves are pretty funny. They do rely a little too heavily on those Beatles impressions, and there's one member missing anyway, so it's somewhat strange they went for a Beatles impression, but I guess somebody just didn't like John, other than Yoko. However, they are just ducks. They're just ducks with the stereotypical alien or bird eyes that you see everywhere throughout the series. There's nothing really special about the way that they look. I wish there was. I wish there was something that I could look at them and go, ooh, they've got the sauce. They've got the juice. I want to give them a higher score, but I can't because they're just fucking ducks. I mean, but the thing is for a bit of a funnier character, a bit of a jokier character, if the worst thing I can say about them is that their design is a little bland, it's still pretty good. So for tone, we're going to give them a 7 out of a possible 10. And I only give them a 7 because of the fact that they kind of start out as sort of antagonists, for no real reason. They could have just asked for help, and I'm sure they would have gotten it. But they're also birds, and they're aliens. Maybe they have British accents. Maybe they thought we couldn't speak English, or they couldn't speak English, or maybe, I don't know, they're fucking birds. Who knows? Their intent is an 8 out of a possible 10. I understand why they're doing what they're doing, and I understand exactly what's going on, and there's a good resolution at the end of it, too. They accomplish their goal, they get their intent, and they solve it. Again, they do it in kind of a weird, backwards sort of way whenever they could just, fly over in their UFO and, drop bombs on the prison. Don't know why they don't do that. Or they could manipulate, the guards in the prison. Point is, it's an 8 out of 10. Design's a 2, though. That gives them a 17 out of a possible 30. Continuing along with the birds, we have the black duckling. And the black duckling is a bit of an interesting one because there isn't initially a relation to space with the black duckling. It is just a duckling who is black. That's all that you get. Until the, last 2 minutes of the episode, you don't really understand that this is also an alien. This is also from space because this duckling has a rocket ship. I don't know if he built it or what, but he's still going out there. He's going to outer space. He's going to the moon on accident. He wants to send, I think, either Muriel or Courage to the moon, and ends up sending himself and Eustace, because he loves Eustace. He loves Eustace. Eustace is his favorite, because Eustace is also kind of the black duck of the family. The black duckling is one of the few, I say few, relatively, one of the few villains who actually accomplish their goals. Albeit, he did it in a bit of a backwards way. He didn't want to be on the moon with Eustace. He wanted Muriel and Courage to be on the moon without him and Eustace. But he still got his alone time with Eustace, and they are just chilling up there at the end of the episode. For a little bit. They're gonna die, but maybe the duck won't. Who knows? Design-wise, he's still just a black duckling. He's just a duckling that's black. The bird designs are not great for the most part. I'm gonna go ahead and level with you. They just look like birds, because they probably are. And tone-wise, they want us to think that this duck is a threat. And maybe it's got superhuman strength because it is an alien. Maybe it's way stronger or way more powerful or way more intelligent than we think it is. But it's still just kind of a duckling. It's not really funny. It's just kind of mean over the course of its episode. It's not really endearing in any way. It's a lot worse than I was thinking about whenever I made it score. Whatever. Tone's a 2 out of a possible 10 because of the things that I just said. Intent is a 9, though, because it does accomplish it. It accomplishes it wrong, but it does accomplish its goal, and it's got a pretty decent intent. You understand its goals, its purposes, and why it's doing what it's doing, which is more than I think a lot of villains can say in general in most media. And for design, we're going to give them a 4. And I know I gave the Duck Brothers a 2 for being ducks, and I'm giving the duckling a 4 for being a black duck. But, 15 out of a possible 30. Continuing along with the space birds, we have the chicken from outer space. Now, the chicken from outer space is the villain from the pilot. I thought about including it showing in the pilot as the actual entry. However, I genuinely believe that its second entry, its second episode for outside of the pilot, is way, way better. It may shock you to think that, because a lot of people love the pilot episode. The pilot episode is a very, very good pilot episode. However, allow me to expound on this particular thought process of mine. The chicken is the first recurring antagonist in Courage the Cowardly Dog. It is the first antagonist to show back up with the consequences from its pilot episode still being evident. It shows that there is at least some continuity. Not a lot, but some continuity when the writers decide that it is necessary, or when they decide that it's funny. Because of this, there is a clear, obvious reason why the chicken is here. It wants revenge. It wants a head. It shouldn't be alive, but it is anyway, because alien biology is fucking crazy, dude. But the chicken is the first villain in Courage the Cowardly Dog to be there specifically because Courage screwed it over in a previous outing. The chicken is there not because it just happened to be there. The chicken is there because fuck you, Courage. I'm gonna kill you. The actual acts of this particular chicken from outer space are a little more, not really violent. They're still silly. They're still cartoony. But genuinely, the plan that this chicken has is to rip the head off of Courage and then plant it onto its cooked body and use Courage's head as a way of communicating and having, agency. And also, I would like to point out as well that within the pilot episode, the space chicken had no voice, had no noise that it made. I assume because they didn't have voice actors. But in this case, because it's missing its head, it's been cooked, it's had its head chopped off, it doesn't have a voice because of that, which is a creative change. It makes sense within the character that if it was alive, it still wouldn't have a voice. But now it's no different thematically. It's still just as expressive with its body as it would be in the first episode, in the pilot. Being an alien allows it to be a bit more realistic that the chicken is still alive, but also, chickens can live a long time with their head chopped off, remember? It's a weird fact about chickens, but I see where they came up with this, It's... Space Chicken is good. So for tone, we're going to give him an 8 out of a possible 10. For being a legitimately frightening and unnerving, stressful threat that is there to cause harm. It's silly, because it looks like it does. But I gotta be honest, if I was walking down the street, if I'm at Walmart and one of the rotisserie chickens stands up in its little thing, breaks out of the plastic container, and chases me down with a laser pistol, telling me how it's going to chop my head off and wear it like an ornament, I'm going to be a little afraid. I'm going to be a little alarmed. Design's a 7 for pretty much the same reason. Just it's silly, but it's there and it's good. I like it. And for what was the other one? Intent. We're going to give him a 7 out of a possible 10. It's there. You know why it's there. And it's simple, but it's effective. That's a 22 out of a possible 30. I didn't hate the Goose God the first time that I watched Courage. Mostly because I didn't really pay attention to the Goose God. But as an adult, I hate the Goose God. It's not good. It's not a good episode. It's not a good villain. It's not a good anything. I will give it credit for following established bird lore, really being the first one in my list, at least, to break established bird lore. And it's not an alien. It's a god. Still comes from the sky, though, so we'll take it. But that's where my praise ends. It's kind of just implied to be Zeus. The point of the Goose God, the whole point of the episode, is that he wants to fuck Muriel. That's it. That's the plot. And Courage has to cock block him as hard as he possibly can. I get it. The Goose God is supposed to be Zeus. I understand that. I see the reference. It's not good. And really, he's not funny. He's just annoying. He shows up, he does his thing, and then he leaves. And he leaves zero impression within at least my mind, and pretty much everybody's mind that I can tell from just being online and researching these episodes. The Goose God is not a standout villain in any way, shape, or form, other than the Zeus reference. The fear of Goose Dick is probably the only reason that I'm going to give the tone a 3 out of a possible 10, because it is a little concerning, a little alarming. Same reason why the intent is also a 3 out of a 10. It's just, I don't want to be fucked by a goose. That's it. Design's a 1, though. I haven't talked about it because it's completely forgettable. It is a goose in a toga. He's got a voice. He's got some kind of generic Zeus imagery with him, but it's just a goose in a toga. It's a 7 out of a possible 30. And for the very last of the birds, we have LeQuack. LeQuack is the one that everybody remembers. Everybody knows LeQuack. LeQuack is a French duck. That kind of French, not like actually French. He's cartoon French. And I immediately have issues with this. I disagree with the fact that LeQuack is actually French until just now. Really thinking about it, all of the birds are from outer space or from the sky or something. LeQuack is from France. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But think about it. Do you think a guy like LeQuack is here legally? You think he immigrated, went through the processes and everything? No, he's a criminal. He's a man, he's a duck who is French with an evil twirly mustache and blue hair and a mallet. And this fucking duck is an illegal alien. Just thought of that just now. I'm sure a lot of people have already made that observation or that joke or that reference. And I'm not very original with it. But it just kind of dawned on me, and I thought I'd share it with you. But LeQuack wants to do crime. That's pretty much it. He wants to be gay, do crime, and he is way better at the crime part. I think he's just there to convince the Bagges to be part of a heist, to be part of a criminal activity of some sort. And then whenever they don't, he's just like, all right, well, do it anyway. I'm going to trick you. I'm going to lie. I've got this weird shadow puppet thing going on. I'm French. And the tone is pretty funny. It's a sillier episode, definitely. You never once really fear for the Bagges in this episode. You don't you don't fear for Courage either. And it is also kind of funny that this French duck just wants to steal things. I don't know how they came up with this character, It may be a reference to, a French criminal of some kind. Hello, Percy. Percy, what are you doing? Do you mind? Hey. Good girl. Good girl. So for tone, we're going to give him a 7 out of a possible 10. Because it's consistent. It's not really concerning. It's not really stand out. But I can appreciate a good, consistent, relatively silly tone to an episode. It's fun, especially once he escapes at the end of this episode. Is it this episode? It might not be this episode. But when he escapes from the handcuffs and he just, yanks his hands out because his hands are super teeny tiny. I know that that's a trope, but it gets me in the good brain juice, Intent is a 5, and that's just kind of because he's just there for crime. It's not a reason for it, not a purpose for it. He just loves crime. He loves to commit crime. He wants to steal things for the money, I guess, but also just for the thrill of it. I don't know. LeQuack is there for crime. We know why he's there. He's a criminal. And French. And for design, we're going to have to give him a 6. Because even though he goes against established bird lore by not having the crazy, alien eyes and not being from space, it's LeQuack, man. I can't give him a bad score. He'll hit me with his mallet. Come on. That's an 18 out of a possible 30. The episode with Mama Bagge. It's strange. It's one of my favorite episodes, personally. But Mama Bagge is not one of my favorite villains. The reason why it's one of my favorite episodes is because it doesn't really follow any of the traditional episodes in terms of what they're there for and what they intend to do. Mama Bagge is not a villain for Courage, and she's not really a villain for anyone yet. She is just a mother who is awful at being a mother. She has dumped all of her trauma on Eustace. She has dumped all of her misgivings on Eustace. She is an angry, bitter, old bat. And all of it is thrown onto Eustace, who has gotten to the point where he doesn't want to even be in the same room as her. There's a lot of family trauma, a lot of mommy issues within this episode. Even at the very beginning, even Muriel, who famously gets along with almost everybody, at least a little bit, hates Mama Bagge. Mama Bagge also hates Muriel, but this is the first episode where you really get context for why Eustace is just so crotchety and so mean-spirited. He gets it honestly. Really, he gets it so honestly, in fact, that it kind of makes him seem less severe for the rest of the season. Because you kind of get it. You understand what Eustace went through. And it doesn't excuse, abusing a dog. It doesn't excuse him being, just a nasty, awful man. But it does contextualize it. And it gives you a lot of reason to at least relate to why Eustace is the way he is. Even though there really is not an intent to Mama Bagge. There isn't a purpose to the things that she's doing or saying. And while that does knock her down on some points here, like within the context of the actual scoring chart, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for the sake of the story that they're looking to tell in the episode. I know that seems a little counterintuitive, a little counterproductive, but it kind of shows how sometimes there isn't a reason. Sometimes there isn't a purpose. There is not always going to be, rhyme or reason to a family member being abusive. Sometimes it just happens. And you can say that she blamed Eustace for whatever. You can say that she is doing the best with what she's got. You can excuse some of her actions, but it doesn't justify them. Nothing that, she does to Eustace is justified. She's his mama. Come on, just be nice to your kid. It's really so much easier. Also, just for the record, you also get to see where Eustace gets his dashing good looks from. They are the same person, 1 billion%. Right down to the insecurity about the being bald. It's right there, plain as day. It's not, that doesn't make her unique. She is just kind of a lady who looks like Eustace. They just took his face and put it on a tiny body. So for tone, we're giving her a 9. We're giving her a 9 for tone. And I think I will die on this hill. I wanted to give her a 10. I did. But I couldn't quite justify it. But the reason it is a 9 is because it is uncomfortable. Just what she puts Eustace through and how much he doesn't want to be there. It's relatable. You just don't want to be in the same room with these two. You understand why Muriel didn't want to go, too. Like, come on. Intent is a 2, though, because there isn't one. There is no purpose to the things that she is doing at this particular point in time. She likes courage, and she hates Eustace. That is it. There is no intent other than that. And for design, we're going to give her a 5. Because you get to see where Eustace gets his looks from, and you get some context on who he is. And she's got insecurities in her own design. It's fine. It's good. It's all right. That gives her a 16 out of a possible 30. Ramses or Ramses. Ramses is fucking good, man. Like, he looks like a Happy Meal toy, but oh my god, Ramses is such a solid episode. Ramses is probably the first what I would consider existential threat that the Bagge family has to deal with. Yeah, they deal with aliens, they deal with gods and stuff like that. Goose God's not really threatening. Ramses, on the other hand, in his first, minute being not even on screen, but just existing, Ramses kills 2 guys. He consumes them with a swarm of locusts and kills them, presumably. We never see it on screen. That establishes the threat very, very well and very, very early. Ramses just wants his slab back. His, give him the slab. Return the slab. Or else suffer his curse. I mean, what can I say? The man knows what he wants. He is simple, direct. He knows his shit. In knowing it and in establishing this early, you feel this sense of dread whenever the Bagge family picks up the slab, whenever they find it, which is pretty persistent and consistent throughout the episode. That feeling of dread just looming in the background, even whenever Ramses is not on screen. His curses, his plagues, are actually pretty solid too. They don't really feel like anything else that has been presented within the show. The music one's a little silly. It's a little weird that he's got his own theme song, and it's jaunty, it's fun, it's a bop, but it's played at max volume, which is bad. Bad for your ears. But Ramses himself has not aged well, unfortunately. The CG still looks good within the actual context of the episode, because we have sort of this juxtaposition between the 2D animation and the 3D animation, making Ramses look more alien and more strange and way, way more different than everything else that we've seen. He does look, again, kind of like a Happy Meal toy, though. You see him and you're just like, all right, I can count the polygons in him. And even back then, even back whenever this episode aired, it wasn't a very impressive effect. It definitely has only gotten worse as well. And if it wasn't for the fact that he's supposed to be this weird, alien, otherworldly being, it wouldn't stand up in anyone's mind and in anyone's memory. I can't hate Ramses in any way, though. I really cannot. The guy knows his shit. This was a very, very good outing for Ramses, and at the end of the day, he accomplishes his goal. He gets his slab back. He gets Eustace back with him, But he does get his slab back, and that's really all he wanted. So for Tone, it's a 10 out of 10. That sense of fear and dread, and just how are we going to survive this? How are we going to make it? What happens with each curse that's going to occur? I don't know. It's scary. It's frightening. 10 out of 10. Intent is a 9 because it's simple, it's clear, it's effective, concise, and he accomplishes it. It is a little on the simple side. It is a little on the understated side. He just needed an excuse to be there. They had an idea for a big scary monster, and they needed him to be there for some reason. But it works. It works really well. I appreciate it. And design is a 7. I want to give him less, and I want to give him more. So I think 7's good. If you don't know why, I explained it earlier. Pay attention. Keep up. It's a 26 out of a possible 30. Not really sure what was happening with the clutching feet. Clutching foot? Clutching toes? Whatever they are. The Five Stooges, I guess. It's such a weird villain. Weird monster. Weird thing. Eustace has foot fungus, grows a consciousness, becomes alive, and starts wanting to commit crime. Why? Just does. Do we ever understand? Nope. No, you don't. Why are they doing a Three Stooges when there's 5 of... Nope. Don't ask questions. You won't get an answer. You have nothing. Okay, well, are they at least like, like a pretty foot? No. They're not. Foot fetishists get nothing out of this. He is a purple, lumpy, gross, gangrenous, nasty foot. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish with this episode, but admittedly, it could have been worse. There are a couple of funny moments, especially whenever it comes to the foot trying to convince Courage to just do crime. But it's gross. It's a weird, gross episode. And there are a few gross out episodes over the course of Courage the Cowardly Dog. But specifically, the end of this episode just makes my skin crawl. The fact that dog saliva is what, cures this foot fungus, and he has to, lick them just way too much, way too often, it's nasty, man. Let's move on. Tone's a 5 for being gross and funny. Barely on the second one, but it's still got some kind of funny moments. We'll give them credit where credit's due. Intent's also a 5, because we know what they want to do, and they tell us why. They just want to commit crime for the sake of committing crime, but maybe there's a reference I'm missing between the Three Stooges reference and the crime. I don't know. I don't think I am. I think it's just a weird smattering of things that they've smashed together to make the clutching foot, but whatever. And design's a 3, because it's nasty. 13 out of a possible 30. The Hunchback of Nowhere is probably the saddest episode in the first in the first season of Courage the Cowardly Dog. Because the Hunchback is just a guy who wants to be left alone, but people fucking hate him because he's a hunchback. And that's something, quick tangent here. Between the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and this, and just hunchbacks being mentioned a few times in other media, why exactly were hunchbacks so hated? I don't get it. I get that they're disfigured. I understand that. But why? Why did people fucking hate them? Why did people despise hunchbacks? What was the point of that? Because they're ugly? Well, fuck you. Anyway, the Hunchback is a pretty sad episode, at least at first. This hunchback just wants peace, wants to have friends, and wants to experience kindness, but has only ever met cruelty. He has only ever been thrown out of places or had things thrown into his face. He's never been in a situation that has allowed him to see human kindness outside of some very select moments throughout his life. When he encounters the Bagges, he finds some actual kindness from Courage. I think Courage is scared of him at first, but after the initial fright, he gets along really well with the Hunchback. Muriel, same way. She's very kind, very receptive, very generous, and then Eustace wants to fucking kill him. Eustace wants to hit him with a mallet or something, dude. Eustace is on the warpath with this Hunchback, and it's one of Eustace's probably least sympathetic episodes. He's just mean here. He just hates the Hunchback. He doesn't listen. He doesn't care. He's so crusty, this episode. He's so yucky. He's so nasty. I don't like it. I don't like Eustace in this episode, but that's probably a good thing. That means that they did good at creating a sympathetic villain. And really, even calling him a villain is wrong. He's not a villain. He has no villainous intent when he gets there. But he does try to kill Eustace by the end of the episode. So, villain he is. And as far as how he looks, I take issue a bit with the exaggerated hunchback features and kind of the way he does look a bit more like a monster than I think is necessary for the sake of the show. I get that it is exaggerated because of the show and because of the content in question. Courage has a very exaggerated way of animating things and drawing things. So I get it. But it does kind of just feel like you're making fun of disabled people. So there's a give and a take, I guess. But I think my favorite part of this episode is the ending. Similar to the Shadow from way back at the beginning of the list, the Hunchback actually has a happy ending. He just realizes that not everybody is evil thanks to Courage and Muriel being kind and being forgiving and being caring, even despite Eustace being Eustace. Again, he does try to kill Eustace, but let's be honest, Eustace deserves it. Eustace deserves a lot worse throughout the course of the show. Season 1's not so bad, but like this is the worst of Eustace in Season 1. So for tone, we're going to give the Hunchback a 7 out of a possible 10. He goes from sad to kind of happy, to murderous, to hopeful, in a very clear, obvious way. I don't ever fear the Hunchback, but I think that that's the point. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to pity him. You're supposed to relate to him, and you're supposed to accept him. Because of that, the design feels a little counterproductive. It feels a little overdone, and a little overdramatic. So due to that, it's just going to be a 5 for design. It's effective, it works, we understand why people are afraid of him, but it's a little too much. But intent's an 8, though. The intent is an 8, because he just wants friends. He just wants to feel kindness, and I think we can all relate to that at least a little bit. So that gives him a 20 out of a possible 30. Queen of the Black Puddle. More like Mean of the Black Puddle, am I right, boys? Queen of the Black Puddle is the best villain. Hear me out. From the very beginning of the episode, before we even know what's happening, before we know who the Queen of the Black Puddle is, something is wrong in Nowhere. It's raining. And it's not just raining, it's raining a lot. It has flooded, and all of this water, this standing water, is everywhere. But then suddenly this woman starts appearing in reflections. She starts appearing in the water outside and starts to... I forgot what I was saying there. Hang on, give me a second, let me recover. She begins to entrance Eustace with her siren song, solely for the fact that she really wants to fucking eat him. She wants to eat and kill and drown Eustace. Not in that order. Doesn't make a lot of sense. She wants to drown and kill and eat Eustace. That makes sense. She conveys this as well without ever actually speaking. She has no words because she's not human. She is taking the form of this beautiful human woman just to lure men to their deaths, to the watery grave that she has presented for them. Because she is actually like this weird, scary anglerfish monster who's gonna eat Eustace in one bite. It's a little alarming when she does transform. It's very Zarbon-esque. She's even got the blue skin. Like, it's... the comparison's there. But more, the feeling of just fear that the Queen of the Black Puddle actually puts on is probably unmatched throughout the course of the series. Because initially, you're made to think that she can only appear in the water that exists outside of the home. But then she appears in the bathtub. And that's the moment where I would die. I would have a heart attack and die on the spot. Because at that point, you're not safe. This is ghost shark levels of ridiculous. She can climb out of my mouth because I am 70% water. I can't justify not being afraid of that, you know? Even still, she almost succeeds at doing what she is there to do. She almost kills Courage and Eustace, and the only reason they don't is because Muriel is so sad she has a puddle of tears beneath her feet that they can come out of for some reason, even though tears are different inherently than water. Whatever. The point is the Queen of the Black Puddle is phenomenal. Quite possibly the best villain in all of Courage. Probably not, but at least from my memory, I would put her at least in the top 3. Tone's a 10 out of 10. That feeling of dread, that feeling of she can appear anywhere, she can do anything, she can easily kill me. This magical deity, god, monster who wants to eat me can just appear anywhere at any time. especially with, like, modern conveniences and modern things. Like, I've got water pipes all through my house. I've got a hot water heater. Whoa. I got a hot water heater right there. That's all she needs.
Hi.
That's my wife. Her intent is a 9 out of a possible 10. Because she wants to kill and eat Eustace. It's simple, but it's effective. I mean, come on, let's not beat around the bush here. And design is also a 9 for being initially, alluring or potentially attractive, but then turning into an anglerfish who wants to bite your head off and swallow it whole. It's almost like a combination of a siren and a mermaid and also Zarbon. So, 28 out of a possible 30. Benton Tarantella is, first and foremost, obviously a Quentin Tarantino reference, at least in name. Not really anything else, maybe a little bit design. And as a zombie, man, it's frightening. He's alarming. He's scary. The Groucho Marx glasses just make him look even scarier. It's a weird fact that is the case. But again, uncomfortable would be the best word that I could think to describe him. Disturbing. I don't like him. I wouldn't invite him into my home, and I don't think the Bagges should have either. But they're stupid, I guess. If a zombie comes to my door, he knocks on my door, and I open the door and I see a zombie, I don't care if he's talking at all. I don't care if he makes English words. I'm slamming the door in his face. Maybe that's racist. Maybe that's zombie racist of me. I don't care. And in this particular case, he wants to perform a, blood ritual in which he's going to raise his companion from the dead, who is buried beneath the Bagge home for some reason. Don't know what that's about. They never talk about that again either. They never reference it again. He's just there for this episode. But anyway, they want to raise this guy from the dead. Benton wants to raise him, bring him back, and they're gonna just cannibalize Muriel. That's the plot of the episode, by the way. That is the entire plot. They're filming a snuff film where they consume a woman. This is a kid's show, mind you. And they just don't really talk about it in a way that's, that gives it the proper gravity. I don't know. I can't... It's concerning. It is probably the most inherently dark or inherently evil plot from any particular villain throughout the show, because it is meticulous. This is third-degree murder. He approaches the Bagges, and he charms the shit out of them with full intent to murder and consume at least one of them. My only real big takeaways are that he does just kind of look like a regular zombie in a suit. And that can get a little old pretty quickly. There's not a whole lot of creativity in his actual design itself outside of the Groucho Marx classes, which are pretty funny. That's a pretty funny addition, especially because it genuinely fools the Bagges. Even with as dark and as foreboding and as alarming as his intent is, the way that it's, undone by Courage, where he alters the script and they have no choice but to actually follow along with what's on the script, it's a little silly. You could, reckon that maybe because they were in the middle of a ritual that they were compelled or bound to do whatever was written actually on the paper. They don't go into that, though, so we just kind of assume that they're stupid. So for tone, that's a 9 out of 10, just because it is uncomfortable, frightening, scary. It's just a little silly the way that it's beaten, the way that he is defeated. Same reason why Intent's an 8 out of 10, because if he really wanted to eat him, he had multiple opportunities, but he has to do it in this weird ritualistic way that they don't really explain why he's doing it this way. I don't know why he couldn't just resurrect his buddy. Maybe they had to do it in the light of a blood moon or something like that. But why the movie? Why the snuff film? Questions. And then for design, it's going to be an 8 out of 10 for just being a zombie with glasses. But a scary zombie with glasses. That's a 25 out of a possible 30. Out of all of the villains in Courage, I really didn't expect the snowman to be my personal favorite. It's a weird feeling, because he's just a snowman. He's just a sentient, alive snowman with a Sean Connery accent. That's it. That's what he is. If I looked at him, if I were to view him with my peepers, that is what I would see and what I would hear. He's also a mad scientist, too. Don't mistake. There's more to his personality than just Sean Connery accent. A lot of the villains in Courage, like, now that I'm thinking about it, are really just, let's throw traits, like, at a thing and just see what sticks. But yes, the Snowman is a really good villain, mostly in his particular intent. The Snowman is what I would call tragic. He has a tragic backstory in which he has lost everyone. Every member of his family has melted thanks to, you know, the warming of the polar ice caps. All of his family had melted and died, presumably dead. And he wants to bring them back by using a specific gene that exists within humans called the no-melt gene, which causes us not to melt in the sun. It's the only thing that keeps us from not melting. It's good to know. But he wants to steal it from some humans and bring back his family. Yeah, I get it. Let him. Get a few people that you don't like very much and take their no-melt gene and give them to the Snowman. These are sentient living creatures, you know? Like, these are beings with consciousness and thoughts and feelings, and we just kind of ignore them and kill them. I mean, yeah, global warming, I get it, I understand. But even taking the no-melt gene, it may turn them, like, it turns Eustace into a puddle at the end, because he does succeed in getting it. But Eustace is still alive. Like, if snowmen melt, they're no longer snowmen, they're puddles. If a human melts, it's still a human, apparently, and it's still alive floating around in a jar. Just give a few of the, like, I'm sure some people would volunteer for this, just for the experience of being, like, liquid. I think it'd be interesting to feel like liquid. Would my joints still hurt if I was liquid? Would my organs still exist? Like, I don't really know how this would work. Would I be immortal? A lot of questions. No answers. The tone's a little kind of all over the place, though. He's a snowman. He's not frightening, even in a mad scientist capacity. There's nothing about him that makes me go, ooh, eh. At the same time, he tries really hard to be scary, but he's just sad. He's just lonely. He's just sad and lonely. It's like that old man. It's like Carl from Up, where he's just crotchety and wants people off of his property, but also needs people on his property, so he can steal their genes. He's like a pants thief. His tone is definitely very consistent once you really get into the episode, because that purveying sense of sadness just floats throughout the episode. It's a little silly that it's a snowman. It's a little silly that there are this group of snowmen, these snow people. So it's a little odd, especially considering their level of technology and stuff. But I don't know. I think the Snowman is probably the most sympathetic villain in all of Courage, other than maybe one or two others. I'm not thinking of who they are right now, other than maybe the Duck Brothers, I guess. Keep in mind as well, the Snowman actually does accomplish his goal. He does actually do the thing he wants to do. He does get the no-melt gene. He gets it from Eustace, which is why he keeps coming back up. He actually succeeds in saving his own life, because that's what he needs it for initially. I don't think I mentioned that, but he doesn't have the ability not to melt. He's just like held on through sheer force of will, I guess. But he survives because of this episode, because he gets that no-melt gene from Eustace. And it works. He comes back, and I gotta like him. I know I like weird villains, but man, personally, top tier villain right here, at least in terms of intent, and that's about it though. Tone's a 7 for, again, that just overwhelming sense of sadness and loss that he carries with him. And for intent, it's gonna be a 10. I mean, what else did you expect? It's right there in the word. It's an intent. He is sympathetic and relatable and understandable and tragic. And a snowman, which is why his design gets a 4 out of a possible 10. Overall, that gives him a 23 out of a possible 30. The Eggplants are there also. They're definitely part of the villains in Courage. They exist. Not going to spend a lot of time on them because they are just weird. They're eggplants that don't want to be eaten anymore. They don't want to be consumed. But they just want water. That's really it. That's what we find out. It's not even that they don't want to be eaten. They just want water. They're also not scary. They're not funny. They're not sad. There's nothing about them that is very recognizably them. There's nothing about the Eggplants other than the fact that they worship the great eggplant, and they are just eggplants. They are eggplants with faces, like Potato Head, but an eggplant. And like their goal is to eat Muriel too. Again, this happens a lot in the show. They want to consume Muriel. and Courage has to save her, which is, again, kind of an alright intent. Like, it's threatening, but why? Why do they want to do this? Why they want revenge, but why not attack more people than just Muriel? I know Muriel is the only one there, other than Eustace, but why don't they eat Eustace? Eustace is a bad man. Like, eat Eustace. Do something else. Do something different other than trying to eat Muriel, too. And if you're going to eat Muriel, at least do it like Benton did, and do it in a way that's creative, or strange, or anything. Just do anything different, please. So for tone, it's a 2 out of a possible 10. For intent, it's a 3 out of a possible 10. And for design, it's a 2 out of a possible 10. That gives him a 7 out of a possible 10. No. That gives him a 7 out of a possible 30. I want to punch little Muriel in her fucking face, dude. Like, I want to kick her in the head. Just, bah, bah, bah. Little Muriel technically isn't a villain. Technically, the tornado is the villain in this episode because it's what turned Muriel into a child. You're meant to hate little Muriel. I get it. I understand. It is... Little Muriel is every annoying, snotty, ratty, gross, spoiled, like, tablet baby that you've ever seen. She's just rancid, I guess is the best way to put it. There isn't blood flowing through their veins. There's venom and bullshit. Little Muriel has no goals. Little Muriel has no purpose. Little Muriel just wants to cause pain and suffering, much like a lot of other children. Not all of them. We got some good kids out there. I like my kid. Not Little Muriel, though. And to best summarize the tone of the episode, it's frustrating. It's infuriating. It is one of the few episodes of a cartoon that has made me watch it and go, I am angry, and I know that you're doing that on purpose. I am not angry because the episode is low quality. I am not angry because I feel cheated for watching this. I am angry because you are making me angry. Everything else about Little Muriel is just there, though. There's no real purpose, again, to her existence. She is just there as an agent of chaos. And that's fine, but it means she has no purpose. So, we're just going to skip over a couple of things and go straight to the end here. Tone's a 10 out of 10 because I am angry every time I watch the episode. Intent, though, is a 1 out of a possible 10 because there isn't one. And design, we're going to give her a 4. And we're giving her a 4 because she looks like Muriel, yes, but she also looks like little shit Muriel. And Muriel looks like a very nice lady most of the time. So we'll give her a 4 for that. That's a 15 out of a possible 30. How now, brown cow? The Great Fusilli is the villain that is introduced in the finale of Season 1 of Courage. And the Great Fusilli is interesting in a lot of different ways. He's this weird little crocodile man, first of all. They don't really talk about that. They don't ever ask why he's a weird little crocodile man. But he is. It's just who he is. But he travels around, presumably, the country with this weird puppet show where the goal is to get people on stage so he can steal their bodies, their souls, their livelihoods, their being, and take them along on his crazy, awful, terrible crew. I don't know if that made sense, but you get what I'm trying to say. He's there to kidnap people and force them forever to serve him as puppets. There are a few questions raised by this. Namely, is he the one in charge, or is the masks from which the strings descend from, are they the ones that are in charge? We don't really know. I assume it's the masks because of the way the episode ends, but again, we never get a good answer. The best thing about the episode, though, is actually the fact that this episode, as is fairly well known at this point, was initially drafted as the end of Courage the Cowardly Dog. This was going to be the final episode. This was how the show was going to end. And it's going to end with the Great Fusilli, even though he's dead, having turned Eustace and Muriel into puppets. And Courage just living with them and making them do and say things like when they were alive. That's sad. That's really sad. Just thinking of this dog living alone with the puppets of his dead owners, using them to, act out their normal day-to-day routines. That's one of the most depressing things I've ever thought of in my life. The Great Fusilli also kind of perfects what Cats began as essentially this serial killer hiding behind a much sillier facade than cats did. He is there to kill you. He is there to steal your soul and your purpose. For all intents and purposes, at the end of the episode, we can assume Eustace and Muriel are dead, or that their souls have been consumed by the masks of joy and sorrow. We never know, we never find out, we never actually get it, but we can assume. The tone is a bit kind of all over the place, though. This is a very dark episode, especially by the end, but it's very just weirdly silly. The how now brown cow thing specifically, it's just like, why is he doing this? What is this about? What is this a reference to? What am I looking at? You never know, you never find out, they never talk about it. It's not just like a magical incantation in order to get the masks to do their thing. No, he just says it, and then there's applause. And I also want to keep this in mind whenever I'm talking about his design. Part of his design, part of the Great Fusili's design, is actually the things that come with him. His chariot, if you will. His puppet show, and all of the puppets that he has. He himself is just like that's the Great Fusili for you. But if we're counting everything along with him, he becomes much more ominous and much more concerning. So for tone, we're going to give him a 7 out of a possible 10. For being a little inconsistent, but overall being very depressing. Very deeply depressing when you really sit down and think about it. For intent, we're going to give him a 10. We're going to give him a 10 again. That's 2 10s for intent. Because he succeeds in a way that technically impacts the entire show. Because again, this was meant to be the end. The end of the show was meant to be this depressing-ass episode. And I'm so glad it wasn't, because seasons 2, 3, and 4 are still very good. But man, like, imagine if this kid's show ended that way. What a fucking bummer that would be. And for design, he's a 7. You know, it's good. As for the reasons I talked about. Gives him a 24 out of a possible 30. Alright, that's it. That's all of the things, that's all of the villains in the first season of Courage the Cowardly Dog. And here's the list, here's the tier list. They are ranked in order from number 1 to number last. I don't know how many entries there are, but I think it's like 22, 23, something like that. If you disagree with me, please tell me why in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed my content, please feel free to subscribe, like the video. Just hang out for a little while. Leave it on play. You know what? Turn the speed all the way down to 0.25 and just let it play all night for me, please. Thank you. But seriously, though, thank you so much for watching. And y'all have a great rest of your night.